Okay, here goes nothing. My inaugural live stream on TikTok. Hello, people. I guess you guys hear me. I see two people there. That's good. See, I have no idea how this is going to work, so we're going to find out whether or not how I can read comments well. So if you have something that you'd like to talk to me about, and the subject for today is handling tough conversations. And that means when you're talking to someone, maybe it starts to become adversarial, maybe it starts to become a debate that gets out of control, and you're not really sure, how to handle it. I'm trying to give you some advice as to, how you can take a conversation that starts to escalate and how you can de-escalate it. So you'll see up here I have my phone number. That would of course require you to leave TikTok. So you'd have to. I want you to text me your name and your question to that number. If you do that, then I'll check out what your question is. If it needs me to call you back, I will do that. All right, so that's the beginning. As for, to start the conversation here, let's talk about what a conversation is, or really should be. And I'm going to give you 3 ways to define that. Number 1, conversations should be consensual. That means when you are talking to someone, you should want to do that. You don't have to do it. Right? Conversation should be something that you decide that you want to do. The second part of a conversation is that it should be mutually beneficial. Right? You're not there to have someone else talk at you or talk to you. You really have conversations to talk with someone else. That means they say something, you say something, and you kind of talk back and forth, and you go somewhere with it. And the third part of a conversation, for the definition, is that they should be an exchange of information, right? Sometimes people will be in a conversation and they'll be like, well, I'm going to teach you something. Like, and you really need to decide, did I really sign up for that? You know, I'm willing to listen to someone else, tell me what their point is, and give me some ideas as to kind of where they're coming from. But I don't have to look at things the way that they do. And that's kind of a key part of a conversation. So there is this exchange of information. Don't tell me how to think. You're welcome to persuade me to think how you think, but that doesn't have to be where I have to arrive at. So be civil with me, be logical, don't talk down to me, and let's see if we can go somewhere with this conversation. Okay? So that's kind of, how conversations should go. They don't necessarily always go that way. To repeat, if anyone who's joined, if you have a question for me, I think if you send me a comment, I'm hoping I will see it on the screen. I don't know that for sure. Otherwise, if you want to, text me your name and your question to this number here, and I will see it and I will respond to it, and if need be, I will call you back. Okay, so the topic for today is conversations. How to navigate them and how to kind of keep them friendly and non-adversarial. One of the things I'm going to bring up is that you always need to understand the emotion of where someone else is coming from when you're talking to them in a conversation. And by that I mean is that when you're talking to someone and everything seems fine and they're kind of like this and casual, they're in a good state. But sometimes when you're in a conversation, inadvertently, you will get triggered or they will get triggered. And by that I mean is that a person will start to experience an emotional reaction, which is good and bad, right? They've experienced that reaction and there's something behind it. So your goal should be to potentially find out what is driving them in that conversation. Don't try to really talk to what their statement might be, because what will happen is that when a person becomes emotional in a conversation is that they've been hurt. Something's bothering them. Either they feel something bad about the past or they're worried about the future, right? And they're expressing that to you. In that expression, they may attack you. And when you're getting attacked in the conversation, the first thing I tell people is you need to not take it personal, okay? And that's going to be really key. And let me start to write down some notes. So on the don't. When conversations get tough, don't take it personal. I think we all realize that we have our rational mind and we have our emotional mind. And when our emotional mind comes into play, the rational and logical side of things start to leave the equation. And that means we can say and do things that we don't really mean, but more we're speaking from an emotional center. So when a person says something that clearly is from the non-rational side, if you talk to it, that's really not going to help you advance that conversation. And by that I mean, if someone says, you don't know what you're talking about. If you start saying, well, I do know what I'm talking about, then you're probably not going to go anywhere. It may, stay kind of adversarial and it may escalate beyond that point. But if you ask them, why did you say that? What do you mean by that? Then you can start to understand where they're coming from. Because at some point, when a person starts to explain themselves, you will get to understand what they're feeling. Not necessarily what they're thinking from a logical standpoint, but what they're feeling. Maybe you said something that they felt insulted them. Maybe you said something that they took as you're telling them that they're weak, that they don't know what they're doing, whatever it is. Because of that, you want to, kind of understand where they're coming from because, we all kind of don't want to hurt other people, right? We all kind of want to get along and have this notion of being able to, live peacefully with other people, right? It's kind of our goal in life. So if someone else gets agitated and is kind of attacking you, you should understand that that's not really where they want to be. So the question then becomes, what can I do to help them get to a spot where they're not hurt anymore? Okay? So at that point, it's now, okay, what did you say, meaning you personally, what did you say that got them going? Okay? Did I insult them? Did I put them down? Right? Okay. First, what I always say when I'm in that point, I recognize the person's getting emotional, they're getting upset, so now I'm no longer talking to what they're saying. I'm talking to their behavior. And that's kind of a really important thing. What you do want to do is talk to behavior. And let me kind of emphasize what that means. When you're in a conversation and it's getting heated, and a person says something that it seems like an attack or it seems like they're upset, you no longer want to talk about what that statement is saying specifically. What you really want to start to drive towards is, what is the behavior? If you see this writing in mirror view, oh, that's right, because it's shoot. Yeah, okay, so I do see comments, that's good. Yeah, what can I do about that? Can I write backwards? I don't know if I can write backwards. That's bad. I wonder if I can flip my screen. I don't know if I can flip my screen. I wonder if there's any way to do that. Probably not. Well, anyway, thank you for your comment. So this says, do talk to the behavior. And the point of that is that when you're in a conversation and it starts to get heated, click mirror. Let's see. Mirror mode. There we go. Okay. I love the fact that here I'm this old guy on TikTok using stuff. I love when people, half my age are telling me like, dude, you don't know what you're doing. Here's what you do. Just do this. So thank you for that. Okay, good. Okay, so I see the writing in the review, so we're all good now. Okay, perfect. So let's get back to the talking to the behavior. When a conversation starts to get out of control, what you do want to do, well done, thank you. I'm 56, cool. What you do want to do is when you get to a conversation and you get to that point where it starts to become tense, you don't want to talk about what their comment is. You don't want to talk to their comment. That's probably not going to help you. So if they made some attack to you like you're a Slav, right? That's something, first of all, it's kind of hard to respond to. Second of all, it's telling you that they're agitated. So you kind of want to find out where they're coming from. So one of the questions I like to ask people is, why did you say that, right? What is your intention, okay? So at that point, you can now start to diffuse and put the spotlight on behavior and also potentially diffuse it. Because now what you're really saying to them is, I know what you said, but I also know what you're feeling. And I care about what you're feeling. And the second you say that, it's really disarming to a person. So I can tell you, anytime that you're in a conversation with someone else and people start to get agitated, if you show them that you care that they're agitated, that is a great way of diffusing the situation, okay? And in line with that is they don't take it personal. And by that I mean, if someone is agitated and they say something to you as kind of like an attack, at that point, you've lost the ability to control the emotion of the conversation. And that's really what you want to do, right? When they get agitated, if you get agitated, that's kind of the level it's going to stay at. What you want to be able to do is to get to a point where you're talking in a civil manner. I think everybody knows that once you get agitated and once you get emotional, that people are not going to, it's not going to be a good conversation. It's not going to be very productive. You're going to talk at each other, you're going to talk past each other, and it's not going to be really fruitful. So if you start taking it personal when another person gets agitated, you're going to lose that civility that should be present in the conversation. Okay, so let's go back to, I have a phone number up here. If you have any questions, or more importantly, if you want to call or have a phone call with me and talk through two different things, I suggest you do that. So send me your name and your question to this number. Text it to that number. And of course, you'll have to get off TikTok, but we can have a conversation. The point is that I want to help people with two different areas. One, you have a person that you have a chronic problems with. Oftentimes maybe like a relative, especially if it's a parent, or maybe even a partner or a good friend. You find that you have a lot of interactions with them, and they get really tense at times. And so I want to help you kind of talk through what's going on and maybe give you some strategies as to how to improve that relationship, how to improve your interactions, so that you decrease the amount of times you two fight with each other. The other area that I want to, give some advice, give some people advice on is some people have a tough time having tough conversations. And by that I mean is, as soon as you start to disagree with someone, you kind of go into quiet mode, right? You're afraid of saying something that's going to upset them. And that's kind of really bad because what's happening is that you're saying that my feelings are not important. So if you get to a conversation where you tend to be quiet as soon as it starts to get more confrontational, I can tell you that that's what's going on. You are literally saying that your emotions, your feelings, are not as important as theirs. Okay? They're getting upset, they feel strongly about something, you're not sure how you feel about yourself, and you're saying, yeah, okay, I got a yeah, that's me. All right, so let's talk about that though. The first thing we have to realize is that when we respond emotionally, that we're doing something undesirable. And when we say that there's something that's undesirable, I mean, not sticking up for yourself is not good. Right? We're all here, and hopefully we all believe that we're all equal. So when someone does something that's undesirable or says something that disagrees with us, we have the right? We really have the right to speak up for ourselves, especially when they engage in undesirable behavior. So what's going on is that usually there's one of two things. One, you've been taught, and I mean from like a really early age, that what you think isn't necessarily important. And by that I mean is that you were kind of told that, okay, I know you're feeling this, but we're going to kind of, diminish that. It's the old, do your parents validate your feelings kind of thing, okay? And what I tell people is that as an adult, when you experience that, when you don't want to speak up for yourself, you kind of need to go back and think about your younger self, right? Realize that when you're not speaking up for yourself, you're looking at yourself in a household and what you learned for years. And you have to realize that while your parents didn't do it maliciously, they really weren't doing what they should have been doing for you, right? When you're growing up and you're learning to express yourself, you should be able to talk up for yourself. If a parent or another caregiver says, no, what you think doesn't matter, that's kind of a really bad lesson. So when you're an adult and you're unable to talk, speak up for yourself, you need to think about, okay, what do I want to teach my kids? Or what do I want to teach our kids, right? Do I want to teach them that what they think is not important? That, that their feelings don't matter? No, that's not what you want to teach someone. So then you start to get into this dynamic where you're kind of talking to your younger self, and you're really talking to you, right? What do you want to teach other people? You want people to be able to speak up for themselves, and you want them to feel that they matter. So, conversely, you want to make sure that you speak up for yourself and that you know that you matter. Okay? So that's the first thing. The second thing is, and this is, one of my popular videos spoke to this, is when you have a feeling about something, sometimes people are afraid as to how it's going to make someone else feel. And the big thing that I tell people is that I understand that you don't want to intentionally make someone else feel bad. However, if you're sticking up for yourself and you have a valid complaint, if they feel bad, it shouldn't hold you back from telling them what you feel, right? To me, it's really important for people to understand that it's okay to make other people feel bad. I'm not saying to intentionally do it. I'm saying if that's an unintentional result of something you should do, that's okay. Okay? So let me give an example. Someone does something and maybe you think they feel bad about it, but you're not sure, right? You want to call them on the fact that, I don't know, they did something to you that they clearly shouldn't do. Maybe they cursed at you and they yelled at you, right? And we can all kind of agree that that's not a good thing to do. However, sometimes a person will be like, oh, I don't want to make them feel bad for the fact that they yelled and cursed at me because I made a mistake. So we start to do this kind of justification thing where we say, okay, they did something wrong, but maybe I deserved it. And that's a really bad logical thing because it's kind of like your mistakes and your imperfections shouldn't allow other people to abuse you. Right? If someone is dissatisfied with something that you do, they should tell you that they're dissatisfied with it. That doesn't give them the right to talk down to you. That does give them the right to make a complaint. Right? If they are so dissatisfied with the way that you behave and the way that you act, what do they have a right to do? They have the right to not interact with you. Right? So the whole notion that you did something wrong and to give someone else the right to kind of talk down to you, that's not a valid point. So, I implore people to learn how to speak up for themselves. In the comments of this video, one of the typical things becomes, well, how do I do that? Well, if you're not sure how to broach the subject, I say to make a commitment so you kind of force yourself to do that. So let's say you're having a conversation with someone, you want to say something to them, you're worried about it's going to make them feel bad. So you don't know how to say that. But here's what you can do. You can say, I want to say something to you, I think it might make you feel bad, and I'm not sure how to say it. So kind of commit yourself to talking about it and going about that subject rather than talking to it specifically. Okay? I see we have several people here. Does anybody have any questions at this point? I kind of wanted this to be more interactive today, help people, give them some guidance as to how they can handle tough conversations, maybe help them figure out how to deal with a person who they tend to have these rough conversations with, maybe someone who talks down to them often, a boss, a friend, maybe a family member. Does anybody have any questions as far as how to navigate a tough conversation or how to bring up a tough subject? And would anybody like to do a phone call? In case you haven't just got on, if you have something that you would like to talk about, this is my other cell phone number. So send your name and your question to this number, and I will call you back, and we can talk here on TikTok about your conversation challenges. When do you go live? What do you mean, when did I go live, or how do I approach confrontation? Okay. When I'm in a conversation, I'm very well aware of when I'm having a logical conversation and when it becomes an emotional conversation. And there are some pretty easy ways to identify when a conversation becomes emotional. So the first thing I'm doing is, okay, is this getting emotional? Which is, to me, when confrontation is about, right? Disagreeing with someone is fine. Not having the same opinion, everyone's allowed to do that. But when you say confrontation, I assume what you mean is that it's starting to kind of escalate at that point. And the ways that you can identify this, and these are some really important, red flags. We probably know them, but I'm going to go over them anyway. Okay? If a person starts to curse, that says something that tells you that they're being emotional. Number two, if they start to raise their voice. Number three, if they start to make derogatory statements, start to talk down to you, start to kind of, say that your opinions are wrong or that you're wrong or whatever it is. And four, when they try to dominate the conversation. So that means they're more talking to you at this point versus talking with you. So at this point, something's become a confrontation. So kind of going to the note that I talk over here, when something becomes confrontational, the first thing I don't do is I don't talk to their comments, right? If they say something to me, I'm not going to respond to their comments, right? Like, you don't know what you're talking about, this is true, right? The last thing I'm going to say is this is not true. At this point, I know that that's not going to be effective. What I can do at this point is start to find out why are they upset. And by that I mean is trying to understand the underlying behavior, the underlying emotion that's driving their statement. And the way that I do that is by, potentially acknowledging that you seem upset. Did I say something that bothered you? If I can't figure it out. Did I say something that is making you angry? Right? And that's a perfectly valid question. Something we probably rarely ask when we get into a heated conversation because we're so used to just responding. And let me do a sidebar here. I want to talk about something called mindfulness. We all need to have the skill to be able to soothe ourselves. Right? One of the big things, the terms that they're throwing out these days is mindfulness. I do and don't like the term. Mindfulness is good because as an objective, it's where you want to go. And that means you want to get in touch with what you're feeling so that your behavior is in line with what you want to do versus what you're feeling. What mindfulness allows you to do, or teaches you to do, is how to slow things down and kind of get in your body, as they call it, and realize what you're feeling. Now, mindfulness is generally something you practice like off hours. You find an optimal time, you set up an environment that works for you, maybe candles, music, quiet, whatever it is, and you just kind of chill. You just kind of sit back and chill. And that's a really important skill to have because when you are in confrontation, you're going to need to call that up. And if you can't calm yourself down in an optimal situation, you are never going to be able to calm yourself down when things get tough. So that's going to kind of be like a prerequisite for dealing with confrontation. In order to deal with confrontation, you first need to be able to chill yourself, how to calm yourself down, so that when needed, when you're being confronted, you can remain calm. When a person is in a confrontation with you and they're getting agitated, there's generally two drivers for that. One, they feel bad about the past. Two, they feel bad about the future. Here's what I mean by that. People who get agitated in conversations and are angry usually have, pretty much always have, a negative inner critic. They are angry. They're judgmental. They're not necessarily happy people. And what happens is that when you disagree with them, they now see an opportunity to vent that anger onto you. So one of the reasons why people will start confrontation is because they feel bad, and they feel bad about themselves. They want to feel that that's an okay feeling, so that you're bad too. And the way that they make you feel bad is by putting you down. It's the old misery loves company. So one of the two drivers of confrontation is that people tend to feel bad about themselves, and they are projecting that onto you. And they're trying to make this current disagreement a representation of them feeling bad. That's one driver. The other driver of confrontation is when a person is worried about the future. They're afraid of something. They don't know what's going to happen, and that gets them agitated because they have this uncertainty that's kind of driving them as to what tomorrow is going to be like. And because they know that they are feeling agitated, they want you to feel agitated. Because this way you can kind of share their tension and kind of justify their feeling agitated. So in both cases, when a person is confronting you and it's becoming an adversarial conversation, they want you to feel what they feel. Either they feel bad about themselves as a person, they don't like themselves, or they feel bad about the future and they want you to feel bad about it. This way they can sit back and say, oh, wow, I'm all agitated about the future. They are agitated too. Great. I can justify my negative behavior. And that's kind of really what drives confrontation. Okay, so we talked about two different things. One, what is driving the other person in a confrontation? And the one element is that they're feeling bad about something, the past or the future. The other thing is that they're getting in an emotional state. Right? And they're trying to, use the conversation as a proxy for their agitation. So now what do? Definitely don't take it personal, and let me write another note here. Don't respond in kind. And that means several things. That means if they say something, they make some accusation of you, don't talk to the accusation. If you talk to the accusation, you're validating it, right? I think you're this. I think you're an idiot. I think, I think you're a slob. It's hard to come up with an abstract reason, but don't say, well, no, I'm not a slob. Right there, you've lost the conversation. You're now talking on their level. You're not talking to their point. Their point doesn't make sense, right? It's an irrational comment. So what you want to do is start to figure out what are they really talking about. So don't respond to their comment. That also means if they're getting all agitated, don't get agitated yourself. It's kind of like kicking a ball when the ball is not there. And someone takes it away. I always think of Lucy and Charlie Brown in the Peanuts comic. If someone tries to get agitated, is agitated, and they try to get you agitated, and you don't respond, they short circuit. And the reason I know this is because I've done this numerous times in public with strangers. About 4 years ago, 3.5 years ago, I decided that I was going to talk to people in public when they were experiencing emotional dysregulation. What does that mean? You're walking down the street and someone's, clearly ranting and, kind of losing their mind. Sometimes they're not talking to anyone. Sometimes maybe they're talking to other people. I decided, using these kind of rules, that I was going to talk to someone else who I didn't know as a stranger and see if I could help them. So here, I wasn't really having a conversation with them, but they were really having a confrontation with something. In all instances, the first thing I did is I come up to them, I said, hey, my name is David, which is my name. I go, what's your name? That immediately disarms them. When a person is agitated and you respond calmly, like you're not being bothered by it, that is the absolute best way to begin de-escalating confrontation. So there's your first step, right? Be calm, so how would I call this? Do be calm. Okay, that's kind of bad English, but you'll get the point. So the best thing to do is when someone's experiencing, whether it's someone you know or even a complete stranger, is to be calm. Because kind of what you're doing is that the other person is not happy as to what's going on. And if you can kind of bring that to the equation, that makes them feel good. You're literally comforting them. You're saying, okay, look, I understand you're all agitated. Maybe that's not the way that this should be handled here. Okay? I ask them, so now what I do is I ask them, okay, hey, what's going on? Right? What's bothering you? Right? I did this to a guy who is ranting and raving at a blues festival. He was drinking beers and all people within like 20 feet of him were like really tense. No one wanted to say anything because this guy was, ranting and cursing and stuff like that. So I asked him, I said, how's your day going? Right? He started to tell me a story, and this is a really important thing. He now started to tell me what was going on with him. He was, I don't know how old was he, probably like 30. He had lost custody of his child, and that was bothering him. So here, this immediately talks about, brings up several points. Number one, I'm talking to his behavior. Number two, I'm trying to find out where he comes from. And that's a really important thing. Kind of understand where they're coming from. And it's almost like you want to understand the feeling without the agitation. So that's another key thing for, for confrontation. And I'm just kind of getting, I think you can still see it. Do you understand them? When you're in a confrontation, it may help to tell other people how you feel, but in general, you want to understand them, right? That may sound it sounds a little backwards, right? You're in a conversation, someone attacks you, it's becoming confrontational. You now kind of have this defensive mode. Hey, I've been attacked. I have the right to respond. And that is true. But the question is, and here's one of my favorite things, do you want to be right or do you want to be successful? Because if you want to be successful, this is how you're going to do it. If you're not sure how to do that, I suggest that you walk away from the conversation when it becomes confrontational. The only way that you can negotiate with someone, so to speak, is by having the ability to walk away. And if you don't have the ability to de-escalate a situation, whether it's because you can't do it in general, or this particular conversation is getting out of control, you must walk away from it. Because at that point, you're not going to help them, you're not going to help you, and it's not going to be productive. So unless you just want to vent your anger and have a yell fest with someone, and I guess sometimes people will do that, right? You want to walk away from the conversation. So the whole thing, kind of getting back to the point I was just making, is that it seems backwards, but when you're in a conversation with someone else, you want to be successful, or you want to walk away. And if you want to be successful, that means getting rid of taking it personal, getting rid of their agitation, and finding out where they're coming from. They made a mistake, they attacked you, they were being emotional, you have the right to respond, but you don't want to. And here's the great thing about that. When you do that with someone else, you do that with yourself. And what I mean is this, is every time you help someone else walk through their agitation, you learn, you teach yourself how to walk through that agitation. And that's really a powerful thing. In fact, that's literally why I do this, right? I learned years ago that what I'm able to do is to help other people through their discomfort. And I can pretty much say, I don't think there's anything more rewarding than that. So your goal should be, when you're in a confrontation, is how can I masterfully reduce this and de-escalate it? Any other questions? So in case you're joined and haven't, you kind of midstream here, I have a phone number up here. If you want to call in and you want to talk about something, two areas that I have in mind. One, if you have a person that you have regular conflict with and want to figure out, when do you go live on TikTok? Oh, I see, you say every day, I got you. I'll get right back to that. So, as far as my phone number, if you text your name and question, I will call you back. And if you have someone that you regularly conflict with, or if you're a person who has a rough time doing tough conversations, right? As soon as it gets heated, you kind of bail or you get quiet and you don't speak up for yourself. If you're one of those people and you want to talk as to kind of what's going on, I can give you some ideas and give you some strategies how to start to overcome that being quiet. This is my first time going live on TikTok. So I'm now learning how to do it, which is good. I got the whole mirror thing working, which I'm excited about. I'm thinking about doing it on a weekly basis, and I'm trying to find out when that would be. If you have recommendations, please let me know. I'm thinking about doing noon on Saturday, and I'm in Pacific Standard Time. I'm in Oregon, Portland, Oregon. So that would mean 3 o'clock on the East Coast, and other places, 1 and 2 o'clock in the middle of the country. So that's kind of my thoughts is to do this weekly on Saturdays, and I'm more than happy to, get input on that. I don't know, I'm going to try to find out how this goes today, and and see if I'll do more, and I would like to. So, all right. So in case you joined, let me go back to a definition, and if you've already heard it, to me it's a really important definition to have. Let's define what a conversation should be. Okay, number one, it should be consensual. That means that you should want to be in it. Number two, it should be mutually beneficial. That means both you and the other person should be wanting to be getting something, getting some benefit from it, right? And number three, and this is the most important thing, there should be an exchange of information. And by that I mean is that you shouldn't be talking at each other. So if you're having a conversation with someone and all of a sudden they get the idea that, oh, I'm going to teach you something, you need to decide, do I want to be taught? And more importantly, if they're trying to tell you how to think, you should really be thinking, do I want this other person to tell me how to think? Are they coming up with conclusions and telling me that this is the truth? When you get into a conversation like that and they become this, kind of more, confrontational, more adversarial, at that point, the way they look at it is that this conversation has just become optional. Right? I'm willing to engage in them, maybe help them de-escalate things, as long as it proceeds with some civility. If they get out of control, if they jump the shark and start doing things that are just like outlandish, I'm going to be done with the conversation, right? If they start raising their voice, if they start cursing at me, if they start using clearly derogatory language, and they start dominating the conversation, I'm going to leave the conversation, right? I don't have to be there. I don't have to listen to them. I don't work for them, and even if I did, I wouldn't, sit there and take that.